Hello, I'm nahshondion. You're watching Transbrations. In celebration and honor of Black History Month, today's special guest is Lisa Funderburke Hoffman. She's a systems thinker and coalition builder whose work and research examines equitable engagement. A dynamic facilitator, she works with residencies, foundations, and other nonprofits on developing effective strategy and improving the efficacy of teams and programs. A scientist by training, she served as an herbarium collections manager and public school educator, and has held leadership posts at McColl Center for Art and Innovation and Charlotte Nature Museum, among others. Lisa's currently on the Grantmakers in the Arts Individual Artists Committee and serves on the board of the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, Rustle Lab, and Orion Magazine, and is the president and CEO of Artists Communities Alliance. Thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, nahshon. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. The holiday season did just pass, and it's supposed, it should be, and it often is a celebratory time for most people, but it's often emotionally difficult for some people, as in my case. How was your holiday season?
Well, this holiday season was really quiet. My wife and I just spent it here at home. We had tried to make several different travel plans, but we found in late fall we were traveling a lot. My oldest child, which is my daughter, got married or had her happily ever after ceremony at the beginning of December. So it was quiet, and the quiet was welcome. So we just kind of spent time together. I missed the kids, but since I had just seen them, my parents, my cousins, and a lot of family, I took it as a time to just reconnect with my wife.
I heard that. What's that Marvin Gaye song? Let's get it on.
There it is. And I sing it to her, like, I'm like, let's go. And she's like, okay, anyway, like enough of that. So.
I heard that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's good to have a mate during the winter season. And then comes spring, that's another story. America has honored Martin Luther King Jr. with the federal holiday for nearly 4 decades, yet still hasn't fully embraced and acted on the lessons from the slain civil rights leader. His youngest daughter said Monday. The Reverend Bernice King, who leads the King Center in Atlanta, said leaders, especially politicians, too often cheapen her father's legacy into a comfortable and convenient king, offering easy platitudes. We love to quote King in and around the holiday, but then we refuse to live King 365 days of the year. She declared at the commemorative service at Ebenezer Baptist Church, where her father once preached regarding his dream. So MLK's 94th birthday just passed. It was on Monday. How did you honor Martin Luther King?
I logged off of all my devices, stepped away from the desk. I put on my tool belt, listened to some really fantastic podcasts and a book on tape that I'm reading about economic justice. And like I told my youngest son, I said, I've been serving you all weekend. I got to go serve my wife. And that meant I cleaned out our storage room and I put up an organizing board for us to hang tools and stuff. And really what that meant, it was somewhat of a meditative moment because I'm always in a meeting. I'm always running to do something or on FaceTime with the kids or, connecting with my parents or run. And just to have a day, and I mean, I took the whole entire day. I must have started about 11 at 9 o'clock. I just wrapped up just doing that. And also knowing that it meant something to her, like this is a space that she wanted to see differently. It felt really good. So it wasn't something, years past, I've done things like volunteer or do something very active in the community. But I've been thinking a lot about my own personal strength and endurance in this work. So taking some time to do something where my mind can just relax felt really good. So I like to say I did that in honor of him.
Self-care is the best care.
I'm trying. It's a long...
Actually, it's the only care.
Right. It sure is.
Bernice King said she's exhausted, exasperated, and frankly disappointed to hear her father's words about justice quoted so extensively alongside so little progress addressing society's gravest problems. He was God's prophet, sent to this nation and even the world to guide us and forewarn us. A prophetic word calls for an inconvenience because it challenges us to change our hearts, our minds, and our behavior. Bernice King said, Dr. King, the inconvenient king, put some demands on us to change our ways. So you are married, you have children.
Yes.
are all of your children over 18 or?
All of them are over 18. So the youngest is 19. He turns 20 this year. And the oldest, Jessica, she turns 26 this year. And my oldest son turns 25 this year.
Did it take them a while to, did it take your children a while for them to address to your wife, which is their stepmom? How did that play out?
It went extraordinarily well. I mean, I told them one by one. I think we were in different car rides. I told my youngest son, and he said, "Oh, that's what's up." He's like, "Are you happy?" He's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh," he said, "Well, I'm happy, Mom. I can't wait to spend more time with her." And then I told my oldest son, and he said, "Oh, that's so cool. I'm happy for you, Mom. I'm glad you're all together." And I told my daughter, and she said, "Huh, that would explain your haircut." So
the shade of it all.
It's like she thought, yes, that's her. But
which is a fly haircut.
I know. I was like, well, thank you, right? So,
yeah,
but
it's a fly haircut. So
they love her. They have a deep respect and admiration for her. They appreciate. She's really thoughtful and a great mentor and a coach. Like it just comes naturally to who she is. She has impeccable style. Like she can curate a room like no one else. I mean, like you walk in a room, they know the difference from a room I designed and a room she designed, and they're like, "Ooh, Nikki J is on it." That's the name they gave her. So integration went better than I could have ever expected. And I was happy for that. It said a lot about who they are, and the work just raising them. I felt like, you know, even though their father and I are not together, that we had actually collectively done something right. That these loving human beings exist in the world. So yeah.
That's good to hear. That is really good to hear. You hold a master's degree in biology and a bachelor's degree in botany,
yes.
in botany. And I always say they're in botany from Howard University.
Yes.
In 1998, you were a National Science Foundation Fellow. Were there any scientists that impacted you as a child?
Just say no. Like I can't think, you know, people have like idols and they're like this astronaut or this person or that, and I can't really think of a person. And in saying that, it's really interesting, but also terribly true. I went to a predominantly white Catholic elementary school, 1st through 8th grade, and it was rough. It was rough to be a person of color. It was rough to be a Black person. I mean, they would slew insults and so forth. That's my 1st grade teacher told me, "You walk like a boy." I mean, in front of the whole class. I mean, this public shaming and humiliation endured for the whole 8 years. And I think the only thing that I remember I was incredibly curious. I could read really early. I was reading well before like I was 4, and I could do math. It wasn't like work wasn't difficult, but I think seeing the disrespect and the low expectations actually motivated me more to get into science than it actually was the anybody that I honored, because they didn't talk about Black scientists there. They didn't talk about anybody. Anything you had to get, you got on your own. And we didn't have a lot, like in the sense of like my parents weren't making sure I was sitting in front of the TV watching Black heroes and stuff.
Where did you grow up at?
Westbury, Long Island, in New York, outside of New York City, suburb of New York.
Okay. So you wanted to challenge yourself.
It was more about challenging me and pursuing things that I found interesting, like on the walk to school or when I was doing something. It just came natural, but it wasn't because I had any heroes. And then summers I used to spend down in Mobile, Alabama with my grandparents, and well, it's country and it's southern, so there's always snakes and frogs and lizards around. I think that was a big motivation too. So
okay, what was your experience like as, first of all, I love what's it called, botanical gardens, and I just love nature. I grew up at the foothills, the San Gabriel Valley Mountains in Altadena. So Altadena, you know, it's very rural. it snows up there occasionally. There's mountain lions, and I was going to say tigers. There's mountain lions and deers and all that type of stuff. And then one point, like my backyard, because we moved further up into like, it was Angels National Forest at one point. So like my backyard was literally like let out into the canyon and everything. And speaking of abolitionists, Harper's Ferry, Virginia, that raid, I think his name was Owen Brown, a famous abolitionist. His son is buried in Altadena, in not far from where I grew up as a child, up in the Meadows on Aurelia Road. But he died like in the early 1900s or the late 1800s, I think. His father played a role at Harper's Ferry, John Brown.
John Brown, right? And they've got a couple of movies and series out about it.
Yeah. And his death anniversary, matter of fact, was just on December the 2nd.
Was that right? It's all right. I didn't know that.
I think it was December the 2nd. So, yeah, love nature.
Above Altadena, California, on a hill called Little Round Top, named after a key fight in the Civil War's decisive Battle of Gettysburg, sits a sign. It marks the final resting spot of Owen Brown, son of John Brown, the American abolitionist. But how did it get here, and why is it important?
John Brown was the leading violent abolitionist of his day. He had practiced the Civil War in many respects in Kansas in the middle of the 1850s. And then in 1859, he takes that practiced Civil War on the road to Harper's Ferry to try to liberate the armory there of its weapons and give them to slaves. John Brown had a very large family. He had 20 children. Many of his children are involved in his abolitionist activities in Kansas, and then a number of them participate in Harper's Ferry, including his son Owen. Brown is captured by Robert E. Lee, who will soon lead, of course, the Confederate troops in the Civil War. The aftermath of the John Brown raid on Harper's Ferry is that a number of the conspirators are hanged, the most famous of which is John Brown, which is in many respects the most famous American death of the period next to Abraham Lincoln's. In the aftermath of the raid on Harper's Ferry, Owen Brown becomes a fugitive from justice and lives a life on the run for a couple of decades. In the meantime, one of his sisters and one of his brothers had settled here in Southern California. So upon contact with his sister Ruth and his brother Jason, Owen is encouraged to come to Southern California. And he does in 1880 and lives here for nearly a decade, right here in the mountains of the San Gabriels. For years, while the Brown family members live here, they befriended and were befriended by the African American community that made visits to see all of them. And upon his death in 1889, Owen Brown's funeral becomes a major event here in Pasadena and the foothills above it, attracting several thousand people, white and black alike, to pay tribute to one of the most important abolitionist families and members of that family in American history.
Today we have an opportunity to preserve and commemorate Owen Brown's gravesite, a place of significant American and local history. Transferring this land from a private ownership into a land conservancy will ensure open access to it today and tomorrow. Residents, including youth, will be enriched by raising awareness of this link between Altadena and events leading up to and following the Civil War. Saving this site is a profound service to the diverse community that lies beneath it, and honors Altadenans today who realize the importance of history and the lessons it has to teach us and our children. One group that will help develop Owen Brown's gravesite is Outward Bound Adventures. For the last 20 years, OBA has educated and trained local underserved youth in outdoor activities and careers in nature, conservation, and leadership. Developing the Owen Brown gravesite and improving nearby trails has public health benefits and adds value to our community. Owen and John Brown's stories enrich students' understanding of the Civil War and westward expansion. Teachers who know local stories connected to national history make the subject come alive for their students.
What was your experience like as a herbarium collections manager?
It was great. I mean, I mean, it's working with dead plants. I was at the Smithsonian. The best part of it was being at the Smithsonian, the Museum of Natural History.
Mhm.
Your lunch break is literally visiting the exhibition halls, and that was amazing, right? Because I would see things over and over again, so you really got a chance to take it in, and also visiting any of the other museums on the mall.
Mhm.
Other than that, it was again another predominantly white space where
Mm.
I remember when they hired me, Nahshon, I went in, I was in graduate school, and my name was on the hiring person's bulletin board, and it said Lisa Funderburke, Black girl, and that's how they saw me in there. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm happy that you already pointed this out, because one of my questions for you later on is going to be, you've been in a lot of spaces and you're still in spaces where you're often the only African American or Black person, Black female in the room. So one of the questions later on is going to be, what advice would you have for younger people who are going to find themselves in that position?
Mm, mm, yeah.
And so you worked at the Museum of Natural History. I mean, I'm older. I'm sure I probably heard about it when I was younger, but it just really has it passed over my head that we had a Museum of Natural History. You've advocated for the environmental art and public art as a catalyst to integrate established communities with new members. You've been a curator of art and ecology for the Bright Walk Project, Sustainable Neighborhood Development in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You're dedicated to social practice and the convergence of art and science as a vehicle to improve lives and to affect systemic change.
Mm-hmm.
You compared scientists to artists because of their ability to look for the unexpected.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's it. It's all about curiosity and inquiry. I mean,
Mhm.
artists, I think artists put more of themselves into that process, that whole self, that whole body. I've learned a lot from that practice.
Mhm.
Scientists can be a little bit distant, but the link is always the curiosity and the inquiry. And no matter if I'm talking to a scientist or artist, I'm usually interested in what they're thinking about, because
Okay.
I learn something new every time.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And so even though they're interconnected, why and how did you transition from why did you transition from the science to the arts?
That it's that environmental art piece. So I was working at Charlotte Nature Museum, and we started a partnership with McColl Center for Art and Innovation, and they were doing an environmental artist in residency program. And first couple of things that impressed me is that their entire leadership came out to talk about the partnership with me. And I was like, I'm wearing a polo shirt that says Nature Museum, and here they come, all these like fly art people. I was like, dang, they want to talk to me, right?
Lisa, they were looking for the Black girl?
No, they were just looking for the girl, right?
They were looking for the girl.
They
Okay.
were looking like, they said, who is this person? Like, we heard that you know about this place. And I said, well, that would be me. And immediately they were open to my ideas and like opportunity. They listened thoughtfully about when I talked about the landscape and so forth and the opportunity. And we just started partnering with him. And I told everybody I work at Charlotte Nature Museum, but McColl Center is my part-time job. Like, because it felt like I was doing both at the same time, but there was so much joy in working with them. And when they had an opportunity to expand their environmental artist in residency program, they said, how would you like to do that? We're trying to do more community engagement. And I knew that they were prolific fundraisers in the sense of really being engaged with community. And I saw some reciprocity in my own personal growth and working with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just decided to take that leap of faith. And here we are.
How when people meet you, and they don't know your background, I've known you, I think I've known you since 2017. And I mean, I've read your bio on different occasions and stuff. I just don't remember reading, about your scientific background, even though I'm sure I did. People that don't know, when they finally do know, how do people react to you when they find out at some point that you're a scientist, when they didn't know prior?
They're either surprised or it confirms something they noticed about me. I think a lot about frameworks and putting together and what this idea of what systems are working together and opposing each other to get to a thing. So I can go down a rabbit hole unintentionally. Like I'm talking and then you're like, come back. And they're like, oh, it's like, this is that science research part of me. I'm thinking, and they're like, oh, it's either that or it's kind of a surprise because I guess I don't present like a person who's really deeply interested in nature. And I think, that's any day. I could look like I'm out in the field one day, or I could look like, I want to go and be in a fashion show another day. But when people hear me talk about collecting snakes and being out in the field, they're like, really? And I'm like, no, seriously. Yeah. That's the truth. And that's like one of my fondest memories. So yeah. It's
Okay.
either or.
Either or. So in the summer of 2015, you were appointed by President Barack Obama as a member of the National Museum and Library Services Board.
Mm. Mm.
Obama, go ahead.
Okay. No, go. You go ahead.
Did you want to say something?
No, go ahead. I'm going to listen. I'm going to wait for the question.
Obama said, I'm confident that these experienced and hardworking individuals will help us tackle important challenges facing America, and I'm grateful for their service. I look forward to working with them. Your appointment recently ended, correct?
Yes, it did. It just, as a matter of fact, this just past May, I think I wrote the board. Yeah. And one of the greatest moments of my personal history. I mean, it's Barack Obama. I was just like, it's not only just about pride, but it's like to be connected to someone that you admire, that you realize what they had to endure to even get to where they are, and to be even a small part, have my name somewhere, even far off in a distance, linked to his legacy was the greatest honor and privilege of my life. And it wasn't about like accolades or how many people recognize that. It was really about, here is my president, and I get a chance to serve or play such a small part. And I would have done anything. I mean, I signed up to be on a volunteer in his campaign. I was handing out water in front of stadiums. It didn't matter. I was going to do anything I could do to support his legacy and him getting into him being president of the United States. But to have that publicly announced and professionally recognized, it meant everything. And it was great because it melded together my interest in museums and on the art side and on the science side. And my first job, I worked as a page at the library. So, the library side too, I love libraries. I mean, I think they're fantastic. So it was really a beautiful learning experience, but it was an honor.
So were you nominated or did you apply? How did you
I did not apply. When he first, I don't know if you remember this, but when he first came into office and he was creating his cabinet positions and so forth, I remember speaking to my cousin and we're like, we're going to apply for everything. Maybe he'll call us one day. It was just like it was a hope and a prayer. But like I said, we had volunteered. We were like, this was a deep commitment to seeing him successful. I had some relationship with IMLS, and when they were looking and talking with folks about their next appointment as a director. And I guess my name was somewhere in that mix of folks, of people they had spoken to. And they had someone, I think someone may have passed suddenly. And they said, they called and they were like, would you be interested in serving us? Of course. And it's a big vetting process. Like they want to know everything about you. I'm talking about my brothers, myself, things that might come up that might, be. That
what do they say not in a positive light?
Not in a positive light.
And that lighting looks good on you.
And I was like, well, yeah. And so I was like, do you want to know about my brothers or this? Because, they had some involvement with incarceration and so, but they wanted to know all of this. But the beautiful part of that is that you could disclose your entire history, all the things someone would want to know. I got a traffic ticket and so thought it was this. And I told them everything I thought they would know. And I was still invited to be a part. And,
awesome.
and it was down to the wire, like literally they were like, hold the line. And I mean, it was like, it wasn't guaranteed. And it was also somewhat of a new start in a way, because being recognized in that way is like, I've disclosed all my personal history to you, all of these things. I've had the supreme background check, which I don't totally believe in background checks, but in North Carolina, they live by them. It was just like, I'm here. And it felt really good. So, yeah.
And when did it start?
It started, oh gosh, I can't remember what year that was. Was it 2015, I think?
So right before he left.
Yeah, it may have been 2015. Yeah.
Right before he left. Okay.
So.
Okay. And I
got a chance to meet Michelle Obama. And
him, right?
I only saw him walk to his helicopter one day, but we were in her cabinet. So we worked with her. And the day I met her, I shook her hand and talked to her. And it was hard to get words out, because I mean, she is beautiful. Like, I mean, she is a presence in person. And then she had the softest hands I'd ever touched in my life. When I tell you, they felt like rose petals just wrapping my hand around. I was just like, I told everybody, I was like, listen.
I never heard someone describe hands like that, but wow.
Ooh, oh yeah, it was magnificent. And she was lovely, but not politics lovely, humanly lovely. And it was great. It was fantastic.
Did you come from a very politically active community?
No. I mean, my parents voted, and that was serious, and they paid attention to local politics and what it meant for them. But they were not activists or anything like that, but they did believe in doing their civic duties. We talked about it, right? Like, politics were not something we strayed away from. We watched debates and stuff as they came up, but it wasn't like, I think I come from a news family. If there's something happening in the world, they're tuned into it. So automatically we tuned into it.
Perfect. So you're the president and the CEO of the Artist Communities Alliance.
Yes.
The Artist Communities Alliance is an international association of artist residencies, a dynamic field of more than 1,500 organizations and programs that provide time, space, and resources for artists to advance their creative spaces. As the only US-based network for artist residencies, we are a hub for information and professional development for the field. Founded in 1991, ACA currently has more than 400 members in 50 US states and 20 countries, and works on behalf of 1,500 residency programs worldwide. Since 2004, ACA has provided more than $4 million in direct funding to artists and residency centers.
Yeah.
And you came on board
in 2016. 2016. My time was up at McColl, and by that I mean the then president and CEO, she did not see herself retiring anytime soon, and I was ready for advancement. So the timing with ACA was perfect. It really, the opportunity, I had served on the board for a very short time, and then the position opened up, and it was a good time for them, and it was a good time for me. And I had always felt incredibly at home with Artist Communities Alliance. I went to their first conference. I was one, they had like over 200 people, and I was one of like 5 people of color. And one of them was a baby, right? Like a 4-month-old or something.
What year was that? Do you know what year that was?
I think it was 2013, if I'm correct. I think it was 2013.
That wasn't their 25th. That wasn't their 25th anniversary. No.
I don't think so. No, but it just wasn't, it's not diverse. It was just zero diversity, period, at that time. But incredibly welcoming, like good people. I was like, oh, I like these people. Like they were kind, they were nice, they were generous. And it wasn't fake. It was interesting. And it was like, let's talk more. So, yeah.
All right. Are you interviewing or what? You know what? It's so bright, but people look very attractive.
Yes? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Doing it out. Is this hat killing it? Is it everyone there?
I've been working in the arts for about 25 years, and the residency idea and programming has always been something that fascinated me. And when I came to the Alliance for the first conference I attended, it was a revelation. It was like I've discovered the thing that I wanted to do, and the people I wanted to work with, and the model and the programming that I wanted to perpetuate.
The experience of being with this network of people and these connections that we have in this particular conference, there's just something about it that, I mean, not to say that other circles of colleagues and everything else aren't really rich and they're valuable, but there's something unique about the Alliance experience and network and connections that we have that really enrich my own work and help me, I feel, keep grounded to where the field is at, and being a little bit on the leading edge, I would say, about how we think about the value of how artists are doing their work and how organizations that support artists can really progress, into the future. But it's this authenticity that I think is really the experience that I have every time.
It's such a weird thing to be doing, like when you are trying to explain to people who aren't in the field of art what a residency is, and they just are kind of mystified. Being around other people in the field is really amazing and helpful.
What I love about the meetings of the Alliance, that every time when I come back from a meeting, you have so many new friends, and that is really great and so important in the work that we all do.
We have to keep going, working together, which is one of the things that I notice here, that the share of knowledge and information is really something that is happening organically.
Where I have been feeling like I'm an island, kind of removed and not seeing any other colleagues or any other people that I can commiserate with or have a reference to. Coming here to conference has been able to lift clouds for me, and I realize that now I'm part of a bigger landmass, and there's transactions and there's shifts and there's more tickets that go from port to port to port where we're all connected.
Absolutely. The Alliance helped us make our dream come true. Like, we wanted to start this thing. And without the Alliance, that process would have been, that road would have been much more difficult.
As a staff of one, as the one full-time year-round employee of Salt Stall, I come to the Alliance and feel as if I have 300 co-workers and peers in the field, and it's very inspiring.
Very, very fun-loving, very, very hardworking, spiritual, passionate people coming together, and I see that in you and everybody here, and that's what I wish, that continues.
When I wore my bling, I was thinking ahead. This is gold, and I'm looking forward to the next 25 years.
I'm just going to say happy anniversary and many more.
Wonderful. Happy anniversary, Alliance!
Happy anniversary, Alliance of Artists Communities!
Happy anniversary. Let's drink to it. And for another 25 or 50 years more. And you guys rock.
Happy anniversary! Happy anniversary!
Happy anniversary, Alliance!
Anniversary!
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Alliance.
Thank you!
Happy anniversary! Happy 25th anniversary!
Happy anniversary, Alliance!
Would you say you were an artist advocate before you even got involved with the artist communities, or would you say you kind of?
I mean, I think I had appreciation for art and creativity. I don't know if I wasn't directly engaging with a lot of artists, and or at least artists who made a career of being artists, but I had a lot of family members who were incredible at drawing or painting or definitely music performance and so forth. But this idea as identifying as an artist in the world and practicing it as an artist as a way of life and as part of daily, that wasn't part of it with me. So it only deepened as I got, once I got to McColl and got involved with ACA. I mean, then it all clicked and kind of came together in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
Please welcome Lisa Hoffman.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sherry. That was such a wonderful introduction. I'm moved and somewhat overwhelmed by today and this opportunity to speak with each of you about what is so near and dear to me personally. One of the things that I do in my current capacity at McColl Center for Art and Innovation is to work with our team to make the invisible visible. And I want to tell you a few ways that we do this and how this shows up every day throughout all of our programs. Now, on this screen, you see a picture of a little girl, and that little girl is me. When I first moved to Charlotte 10 years ago, I had a really great story that I shared about me. I told all my friends that I met and knew people that I grew up in a small town called Long Island. It was at a quaint little village where I could walk to the post office, the fire station. There was a bakery, a pizza parlor. I went to this great Catholic school called St. Bridget's. I was engaged in extracurricular activities. I learned everything I needed to know between 1st and 8th grade. I had an amazing childhood. And that's partly true. All of what I just told you, it's true. But not until about 4 years ago, when I had an experience at McColl Center for Art and Innovation, and I went through the Innovation Institute, where there were artist-led programs that helped me develop and become a better leader, become more in touch with, one, my creative side, but who I was as an individual, did that story evolve. See, I was keeping some secrets because while I had all of those great affordances, and I had access to all these great extracurricular activities, I also had some other things that happened in my childhood. My parents were the working poor. Some nights I came home, we may not have electricity. Some mornings before leaving to school, we had no hot water. My father actually installed a coal stove. We were the only family in Long Island shoveling coal. And we would run out, and we'd have to boil water for a bath. Or sometimes we'd have to wake up in the middle of the night, and I got to cultivate my love for cockroaches because we had to stomp them because they were so pervasive where we lived. Or sometimes Mr. Walter was downstairs beating his wife. You see, that's not the story that we see, and that was an invisible story about me, Lisa Hoffman. I didn't share it, I didn't talk about it, but it was a very important part of me. And that's how McColl Center for Art and Innovation helped me take something that I considered invisible and non-existent and really non-important about me and helped me bring it to the forefront. That was an important moment for me because it kind of, at that minute, I knew that my calling and my service to this community was on a totally different level. That what I needed to do and what my call to action was much bigger than just how I operated in a building or a space, how I operated throughout time, but it was really more about how I could be in service to the community and how I can help other children and other families and other communities that are feeling invisible in this place we call home and help make them visible. But not because of the sum of their dysfunction, not because of the issues, because maybe the lights weren't on, our bill wasn't paid, but because they were cultural assets. They were the people that we wanted here, that we needed here. We needed their voice, we needed their contribution, and they had value to add to this society. So when I joined McColl, that became one of the things that came to the forefront, advancing artists and advancing community. In 2009, McColl Center started a program called the Environmental Artists in Residence Program. And this is a really great example of an innovative strategy applied to community problem solving. We brought in artist Daniel McCormick, and he did a site-specific installation at Freedom Park. And I'll tell everybody, when I first heard about it, I was like, where are we gonna hang it on the wall? At that time, I was at Charlotte Nature Museum. And I didn't really have a context of what an artist can do outside of four walls, or even how we behave outside of those four walls to affect a certain level of change. Well, Daniel proved that wrong, and he showed us something that we never had seen before. And from that, we developed a model for the Environmental Artists in Residency program based on 4 pillars: art, science, education, and community. You see, Daniel took a very common urban ecological problem, polluted runoff, and he built a beautiful site-specific installation to mitigate that issue. So you start to think about this. What does it look like when you put artists in non-artistic contexts to problem solve and to begin to do things and use words like remediate, fix, infrastructure, improve, convene, and that's what you get. Not only was it effective, it was functional, and it was beautiful. It had aesthetic value. It was an attractor. People were drawn to it. People were moved to ask questions. What does it look like when artists are put in non-artistic contexts? I think that looks like innovation. So as time has gone on, we have been working at McColl Center for Art and Innovation and evolving this model. So that brings me to the next pillar, is science. Not everyone comes in with the level of knowledge that our Daniel McCormick came in. He was a geofluvial morphologist. I say that 3 times fast. He came in, he had a very clear path, a clear direction, and he also had a body of expertise that was unique to Daniel. As we evolved the program and we realized how successful this could be, we knew that we need the validation of science to be able to support these artist-led interventions. So what did we do? We didn't go looking for artists that were scientists, naturalists, geofluvial morphologists, and said, come to McColl Center, do a site-specific installation, and do more. We convened a team. Because, see, what you all don't know about me, but maybe you heard a little bit from Sherry, is that I'm a science nerd. I really do enjoy being outside, catching snakes, petting possums, maybe not so much, but it is a passion of mine. My husband calls me a tree hugger, and I kind of embrace it. I like it, it feels good. But what I do know, in order for artists to be successful in non-artistic contexts and be thought of as community problem solvers, that they need a support network to help advance their thinking, their goals, and their inquiries. So McColl Center, being ahead of that pack and thinking very deeply about how can we support artists and also empower community and heighten awareness around environmental issues, convened a team of experts, technicians, engineers to help every artist that comes in and wants to do an environmental installation. What does that look like when artists and scientists are working together to solve ecosystem problems? I think that looks like innovation. In addition to that, and this is really important for me, I think Sherry captured it perfectly, is the value of education. You see, education is what saved me. Education is what made me feel good every single day. I'm a lifelong learner. There's not a day that goes by that I don't value learning something new. I get to do it because I'm mixed up with great talent from our team and our artists, and I get to work with community leaders. But another key point is, how do we pay that information forward? See, we're all familiar with terms around bridging the achievement gap. We need more talent retained in place. We want to get more kids of color at the table and doing things. If we could only get more children through our door that don't normally come. If we could get their moms motivated and come out of the fringes and come see us over at our institutions, we can increase the number of students through the pipeline. Well, we challenged that idea. What does it look like to begin to challenge those precepts that kind of drive all of our decisions every day? We decided that it was more important for McColl Center through the environmental program to work with children and teachers in place, helping develop content, provide context, and work with each of these students and teachers to evolve their thinking about place-based education, learn about their natural world, and more importantly, cultivate stewards of their communities. Another key point of our educational program, which is really important to me, is the mentoring aspect. You see, great mentors really do a great job at raising great leaders. And we knew we had something special here, not because of us, because we're just facilitators of this process, but because we have internationally renowned artists that come in from all over the world, and they have the capacity to pay that information forward. So we developed what we call our near-peer mentoring program, where our artists are working and actively engaged with students doing important work, creating art, and have the opportunity to inform decisions made at the center and in the field. What does it look like when you put artists in non-artistic contexts and allow them to work with students and teachers in place? I think that looks like innovation. The last point I want to talk about is community. When we talk about community, we tend to sit back, we get in our offices, and we think about how we're going to serve, how do we become more inclusive, how do we create access, and these are all key terms. I've used them several times myself. We write them in grant funds, funded papers, we talk to our constituents, our donors about that. But the idea about building community is that it has to be reciprocal. There must be an even exchange on how we do this. It's not about my friends from Druid Hills coming to McColl Center for Art and Innovation. The power comes in the moment when I leave McColl Center for Innovation and I go to Druid Hills. And we work together alongside artists to co-construct, co-create, and develop solutions to community-based problems. So I've outlined the 4 pillars: art, high aesthetic value; science, validation of the important work that artists are doing, especially through the environmental field; education, the value of education to our society, both in the formal and informal networks; and community, the value of understanding and co-creating with our community members, whether it's a geographic community, a business community, a Parks and Rec agency. How can we co-construct, co-create, and community problem solve and tackle some of the biggest issues around us? And this is what we know at McColl. We know that this innovative model includes very strong, innovative strategies to help us advance this thinking. I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with part of this, that I'm okay. I'm okay because I have a real story, a whole story, a story that I'm proud of. I walk in favor every single day. I have a full, rich life of love, happiness, where I get to pursue my passions for environment, community, and science, and I'm okay. But what I'm really interested in, and this is my call to action to this audience that I stand before, is how can we make the others feel okay? How can we elevate this story where we're no longer talking about communities by the sum of their dysfunction, where we're no longer looking at individuals for what they had or what they don't have, where we're not thinking about how to get more kids on a bus and into the doors, or we're no longer thinking about a 50-minute program as the minute that it becomes aha. How do we start to apply innovative strategies through the arts to activate learning and stewardship in our communities? I challenge each of you to leave here and think about that, because this is the most important moment in Charlotte today. The Arts and Science Council has taken the lead on this. They believe it, they walk it, they preach it, they own it, and we are actively being supported by a rich group of donors and supporters from around the nation. What is your call to action? What are you going to do to make the invisible visible so that we all can enjoy the basic joy of life, love, and happiness, not just inclusivity and tolerance? I'm Lisa Hoffman, Associate Director for McColl Center for Art and Innovation. It has been my pleasure to speak to each of you today, and I thank you.